Hello, first class fans. Welcome back once again to This Week in the FCL. My name is Andrew Kelk. You may know me better as the Elk. And of course, we've got some other wonderful hosts here on the show this week. Our stats man, Keith Kilduff, is present as we talk the Flirty 30, the Dirty 30, whatever you want to call it. FCL 30 is in the books. And I know he's got some breakdowns coming for you as well. Our super producer, the man who makes me look just a little bit better. I know it's hard work, Chris. Chris Barnes will be joining us with his opinions. Today, we try to get him off the fence as we move towards the end of our FCL season. And as we're tying things off in regular season action, it wouldn't be a show if we didn't bring on a real expert to discuss. So we're going into the after show archives. We're talking to one of our very fine friends from another great show you should be familiar with, folks. That's right. Vernon Greene is joining us from a fan's view. Should be a fantastic conversation as we discuss the end of the FCL season, the beginning of Warfare, and of course, everything else that happened this week in the FCL. All right. What is up, fans? Always good to see you here and always good to have a wonderful special guest. Of course, you know, all of us regular guys. I'm here. Keith and Chris are joining me. But I want to say real quick a hello to our wonderful special guest and a big thank you for joining us and providing your expert opinion, Vernon Greene.
Hey, guys, I want to thank y'all for having me on, but I want to thank you for the unbelievable introduction. I think somebody lied to you in the notes about me being an expert, but I'm definitely going to clip that out and play that before every one of my shows now, so thank you.
Well, that's what we do here is we make people better. If you want proof of that, go ahead and ask Sean Wingblade at Maxwell Haddad. We certainly up their game. Isn't that right, boys? All right, we've also got Keith here. Keith, our own numbers man. How you doing this week, Keith?
It's great to be back and CB. Thank you very much for keeping the seat warm the week that I was away. But listen, I'm firmly back here, and you can go firmly back on your fence now.
Wow.
Of course, there is a rotating cast, and as Keith said, some things do change week to week, but one thing that never changes is a man who has strong opinions. That's right, Chris Barnes, once again here with us on the show. Chris, always a pleasure to have you sitting in on the show.
Well, I'm glad to be here. One day I will step off the fence. I may have the other day with a separate video that came out, but you know, we'll see. But yeah, good to be here. It's good to have Vernon on with us as well.
Well, that is right. If you want, you can go ahead and check that out on our channel, folks. I saw that one go out. That is Chris Barnes coming off the fence to give his opinion on movie trailers. What an interesting thing to check out. I can't wait for you guys to see that one. But, of course, right away on our show, we always start off by talking a little bit about what's going on in the FCL week over week. And this week is no shortage. We've definitely got some big news. I'm not going to bury the lead. I'm going to step directly into it and go right into opinions from this wonderful panel we've got today. Guys, Brad Gilmore talking to Booker T. He may have learned a thing or two from slick Nick Harley about writing out his contracts because the boat is out of commission. And for ZaFlertinFlouse, it may be a travesty as Travis Fishburn stepping in 4-0 undefeated, looking to take that title. And maybe we'll finally have a champion in the FCL who's not only holding the belt, but actively defending it for next season. Who knows what's going to happen and what are your opinions going into this one? I'm going to start with our side of the fence. I apologize for that, Vernon. Go right to CB.
Well, we did say last week there's Brad probably had something up his sleeve with this. Honestly, we'll probably go into the general match a bit more later on in the next week's segment. But yeah, I'm not surprised whatsoever that Brad pulled this one out of the bag last minute.
Well, he certainly had a great advisor in Booker T. Huffman telling him, hey, here's what you got to do. Here's how you pull the old bait and switch. My question for you quickly, Keith, is this fair to our champions, ZaFlertinFlouse? No notice, quick change, and all of a sudden he's got to face off against a 4-0 competitor when he was prepping for the boat, and you know that means all he did was watch all the Back to the Future movies once because he's caught up. What do you think? Is this a good thing or a bad thing for ZaFlertinFlouse?
I mean, we'll know at the end of Warfare ultimately, but I think any one of us on screen would rather be facing Gilmore for a defense than the travesty. But as CB says, we'll get into this further on in the show. But listen, fair play to Gilmore. Real feelings of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And he didn't get fooled the second time.
Well, Brad Gilmore is out, of course. We are sad about that. Always good to see him on the air. And Brad, if you're out there and you're looking for a challenger to fill in another match for you, I'll take you on in a hair versus hair match anytime you'd like. Vernon Greene, Travis the Travesty Fishburn, has been a dominant force. He has come barreling towards his opponents, and not for 1 second has he ever let up. Will ZaFlertinFlouse be next in his line of victims, or will this be where the Europeans really invade? No shade on the others, of course.
Travis has been an absolute force, like you said, through the whole season, just tearing through competitor to competitor. I'll get into it a little bit later whenever we talk about it. But, I have this gut feeling that I think the Flouse might show up in this match and make some very bad times for next season in the FCL.
I mean, ZaFlertinFlouse does seem like he may not always be the most level-headed individual, but he is our people's champion, and we want to send a lot of love to you on your defense, ZaFlertinFlouse. Of course, you've got your supporters over here still waiting for those backstage passes in the mail, my man. ZaFlertinFlouse versus Travis the Travesty Fishburn is a suitable main event, of course, for Warfare. It's going to show things off in a real big way, and we are going to have potentially a brand new champion, or perhaps the first ever successfully defending champion in FCL history. Either way you cut it, that match is a real barn burner, and we can't wait to check it out along with the rest of Warfare. But for this week, we're going to talk about everything that we've already checked out. Let's go back over it and discuss all the things that happened in this week's matches. We'll go right to our man with the numbers, Keith Kilduff.
FCL 30 kicked off with an inter-geekdom fight between Cat the Mad and Sean Wingblade as we moved into round number 1 of the unofficial People's Champion title fight of some description. It ends 5-4 to Sean. It's a tale of two halves here in this round as we kind of break it down question by question. Cat goes on 3 of the first in graphic novels, fantasy, sci-fi, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. What 2010's film is Charlize Theron been working for MI6 for Atomic Blonde, Bombshell. The guest wager there, Sean gets that correct. Kurtwood Smith as crime lord Clarence Bodinger in what 87 film RoboCop being the answer. No answer given by Cat. And then the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles question, Brad Garrett providing the voice of what filling in TMNT 2 Out of the Shadows. Krang being the correct answer. Shredder the guest wager there. Cat rallies in the second half of the round here, going 4 for 4 in the next one in Middle Earth, knowing that Rohan is the capital of Idorus in Middle Earth, knowing that Haggard became the care of magical creatures professor in Prisoner of Azkaban. Big Hero 6 being the animated winner at the Oscars in 2015. Sean getting that incorrect, saying Strange Magic. 7th question here, what is the name of the human Autobot task force in the Revenge of the Fallen? Nest being the correct answer. Sean not wagering a guess. 4-4 at this stage. And then in the last question, in Alien Predator, who played Tennessee for Faris in Alien Covenant? Danny McBride being the answer. Cat not wagering a guess to this. 5-4. If we look at the averages of both players moving into this match, Cat was at 5.5, so down about 1.5, with Wingblade also around the 6.3 mark. He's also down 1.5. And I guess, Andrew, 2 players down on their averages, but is that a sign more so that the question difficulty is getting harder?
I mean, certainly there's something to be said for the questions in this round, really spanning a lot of different categories, obviously hitting some that some people have a little more trouble with. I thought we all agreed a few years ago to forget the Transformers movies even existed anymore, but apparently not, still being asked about. And I got to say, if I had to make a movie comparison here, it's like the early rounds of the championship fight in the first Rocky. This is a lot of back and forth, but nobody is trading blows evenly. This is one man getting beat on until he gets a lucky punch in and starts firing back, or in this case, one person doing so, as Cat the Mad and Sean Wingblade both falling a little short of their normal levels, as you mentioned. I think both of them are doing what they need to do here. I would have liked to have seen a little more focus on some of the questions. I saw a few opportunities for it. I'm going to say it. Repeats went by when they could have been used. Maybe buy yourself those few seconds. I think they're still lingering towards the end of the match. So always going to throw it out there. Hey, take the chance. Get the points if you can. So not the best round for either player. And I've got to say the saving grace for both has to be when you're down 1.5 points on your average, it's just nice to have someone else do it with you.
Vernon, it's interesting if you're looking at the questions and looking at their past history, and that Cat had actually cleared the board on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in their previous match against the Flying Cow. So I was actually a little bit surprised to see the Krang question missed.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Krang being almost a secondary villain in the movie, not being a really big focus. You've obviously got bigger names in the casting with the Turtles and everything like that. So Cat, while their knowledge is vast, you can only expect one person to know so much about so many franchises. And if you're going to miss a voice character, it might as well be somebody like Krang.
CB, to use a football term, it really is a tale of two halves here, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It was it was a slow start for Cat, but then they rallied in the second half of the round. I don't know. I think you're right. What was said earlier, the question difficulty has actually gone up a lot. Especially since Cat's first match and that. And so, it's not much I have to say really that you guys haven't already kind of said on this first round.
Well, then let's move into round two. Our wheel comes up, spinners and opponents alongside 10 categories, those being comic book movies, Jurassic Park, Marvel, Middle-earth, Batman, time travel, Transformers, mixed bag, Wizarding World, and swashbuckling adventure. Cat is deferred to on the first spin, gets Batman, decides to take it, and goes 6 of 8, which is actually down on their career stats of 8 out of 8, correct in round two at an average of 7.5. That knows that Chris O'Donnell is the only other actor to play Dick Grayson in a live-action movie, knows that Christopher Walken is in Batman Returns. There was 4 Batman films released in the 90s. And then it's this fourth question, who voiced Carl Beaumont in Batman Mask of the Phantasm, goes down to multiple choice. Robert Costanzo is incorrect. Abe Vigoda is incorrect. Stacy Keach being the answer here. Going back onto Wingblade, first spin, opponent's choice comes into play, and Cat decides to give Sean Transformers, and he goes 7 of 8 in this, which is actually up on his career stats. He came into this 11 out of 12 with an average of 6.3, so he's up in and around kind of 1 point here. Knows that Megan Fox is in 2 Transformers films, knows that Bernie Mac is the comedian that sold Sam Bumblebee in 07's Transformers, knows that Judd Nelson is the Brat Pack actor that provides the voice for Hot Rod in Transformers the movie, and then goes down to multiple choice on this last question, what country houses the Air Force base that is attacked by Blackout in 07's Transformers, Qatar being the correct answer here. It's 12-10, and Chris, from a Transformer point of view here, it's interesting that 3 of these questions are pretty much directly centered around the 07 film. So it just goes to show that sometimes you can get lucky knowing one movie in a franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't really blame the question writers for not diving into the other films to find questions from them, can you? To be honest, it was arguably the best one out of the franchise, apart from Bumblebee, of course. That's a great film. So yeah, that is it's true. Yeah, especially with a franchise like Transformers, like I said, it's not the most popular one. It might generally be a reason these question writers haven't decided to go into the others too much yet to get these questions for them. So as long as you know that first one, that's could stand you in good stead.
Vernon, looking at this wheel, and as strange as this comment is going to sound, this almost felt like one where you didn't want to have to make a call on an opponent's choice, because there's not much there that you could really have killed Sean with.
Right. Sean is one of the stronger IG players, if not, in my opinion, the strongest IG player that we have. Just hasn't really gotten that showcase yet, and he's finally starting to do so. Giving him any category he's going to excel in. Granted, the one question he did have to check down to. Yeah, anybody would have to check down to that. But like you said, the focus was all on the first movie, and I think that was a benefit to him. So maybe because it was a fresh category that not a lot of people have seen so far, that's possibly why he skated through that one. Who knows, but his strength did show here.
And Andrew, ultimately, there's a check down on both sides. There's some miss involved, but ultimately, I think it's just a well-played round by both competitors here.
I have to agree, Keith. I'm a big fan of the check down. There's no reason not to go for it unless you feel that somehow you're going to give the answer away to your opponent should you miss. Maybe you take the 2-pointer in the hopes that they will not get that 1 point of a steal if you think there's no way you can get there and it's a very tough question. Otherwise, both players, they're really focused in on getting the points that they need. They both play a good round and are willing to take multiple choice when it's necessary. This is a round that Sean Wingblade has to be happy with. And since you mentioned the Transformers, that first movie coming up, I got to jump in here and say, I've written some questions, and usually we would try to mix those up, but I can see 100 different ways that this could happen. That being said, I mention it so I can look out at all the competitors who may be listening to this show. I know there's a few of you out there who tune in every week to hear what we have to say. Do not count on a single movie getting you by any longer, because it is something that has been made aware. We have seen it happen in the matchup. I'm fairly certain no question writer is going to let that happen again. So if you're planning on taking Transformers, please go ahead and sit down and watch.
Listen, let's wrap up this in round 3. Kat came into this with a round 3 career of 2 out of 3. Sean was 6 out of 7 in his previous 3 matches. Kat's 2 in the category of Middle Earth. What is the name of Thorin Oakenshield's grandfather, the original king under the mountain? Thraw, I want to say, is the answer. I'm not very good at the Middle Earth, Star Wars, all the crew. Sean Wingblade then back on his 2 to get back in the leading Wizarding World. Who plays Slughorn in Harry Potter and Half-Blood Prince? Jim Broadbent being the answer there. And then it's all on Kat in the 3. In Marvel, 2 actors have played the Punisher in the 2000s. Name both. Can only get to Thomas Jane. Missing Ray Stevenson. Incorrect. On the 5, in Heroes and Villains, Casanova Frankenstein is the villain in what 1990s superhero film? There's a repeat use. The guess is Tank Girl, and your winner by way of winning 14-12, Sean Wingblade, the answer being Mystery Men. And it has to be said, Andrew, we said it the last time, we have to say it again. Sean is the de facto #1 IG player in the FCL, surely.
I mean, you have to love what Sean Wingblade has been doing lately. Everything he's done in the last few weeks has stepped up his game to another level. I mean, from the beginning of this matchup, we knew he was in a new mood. Don't give him a title, he'll make one for himself. Give him a category that's supposed to be tough, he's going to walk his way through it. And if you're a small child throwing DVDs at him, look out. There's a return coming your way. Doing injury to his own children to show how seriously he is. I got to say, I love this side of Sean Wingblade, and I think if ever there was a person who did have claim to put up that fake belt on his shoulder and say, this is mine, I deserve it, and you're going to have to come into my house if you want to prove that you're the champ in this league, even before it's awarded, well, Sean Wingblade, you certainly earned it with the performances you put up so far. I have to agree with Vernon. As much as you didn't impress me out of the gate, Sean, right now you are by far the #1 IG prospect in the FCL.
And CB, Kat in their post-match interview stating that there's a bit of difficulty trying to get access to all the IG content, but it still has to be said, for all of that taken into consideration, still performing at a strong level and just needs a little bit more luck now moving into season 2 and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Kat's done really well, to be honest. And you have to think about the lateness of time it is there when they're actually recording these shows. Well, not recording, but the live shows. So very well. And hopefully they do have a successful season next season.
And Vernon, I suppose we're saying Sean's essentially at the top of the mountain now, but how would you like to see a #1 contender for him for next season worked out? Because we have Alana, Matthew Reed, Kat, Shimo, and Brennan all on 1 win in the division each.
Yeah, it does kind of filter through that you do have that many losses, and a lot of those coming at the hands of Sean Wingblade. That's the thing about it. So if you're going to come up with a competitor for him, I think you need either a fresh face or a tournament. That way you can get the rightful competitor to go up against him, because right now he's at the top of the mountain and it's a long way to the bottom.
Well, congratulations to Sean Wingblade, commiserations to Kat the Man, and we move on to the main event of FCL 30. Finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks of 30-odd weeks, you could almost say, of hype and build, Robert Adams and Chris Adams faced off. And Vernon, I have to come to you. You're the inside man. You're the reason you're here when it comes to these two guys. What was the feelings and emotions leading into fight week with these two?
You've got several study sessions going into this match, and, it was aggravating backstage. There was one Patreon front, and then there was one one-on-one. I don't really know if I'm allowed to say that, but there is, a behind-the-scenes study session the night before, and the tensions were there. That both guys were beating themselves up on questions that they were missing. I was throwing stuff at them that, normally wouldn't get brought up, but we had the wheel category, so we kind of knew what was going to be out there, and I was nervous for both of them going into the day of to say, okay, well, the wheel round might just be a giant tank. But they both performed well, and I'll get into it a little bit more about how I feel about their play as we go on.
Well, listen, let's move into round one of this fight. It ends 6-5 to Robert Adams. They both go 4 for 4 to begin with. In directors, they know that Hollow Man is the Paul Verhoeven 2000s directed film with Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth Shue. They know that Steve Martin plays George Banks in 91's Father of the Bride. They both know that Sam Rockwell is in Cowboys and Aliens, Iron Man 2 and Galaxy Quest. And they also know that The Butterfly Effect is the thriller answer to the 04 sci-fi thriller with Amy Smart and Ashton Kutcher. Then we get into question 5 here in comedies. This 93 comedy with Bette Midler, Katie Namaji, and Sarah Jessica Parker as a trio of witches. As a trio of witches resurrected on Halloween night. Hocus Pocus being the answer. Robert getting this correct. Chris blanking on this. They both missed question 6 in famous actors actresses. What Oscar winner was in The Basketball Diaries, The Quick and the Dead in 1995. Leonardo DiCaprio being the correct answer here. Robert saying Samuel L. Jackson, while Chris said Denzel. They both get the horror question correct. This 81 comedy featuring 2 American backpackers attacked by a werewolf while traveling in England, American Werewolf in London. And then they both missed the final question in rom-coms, this 09 rom-com with Vince Vaughn, Kirsten Bell, Jason Bateman and Kristen Davis, Couples Retreat, 6-5. And looking at their averages, they're actually quite tighter than I think a lot of people realize. Robert came into this with a round one average of 6.6. Yes, he's down a half a point, but Chris Adams came into this with a round one average of 6.3. So there actually wasn't much between these two guys. He is down 1.5 here, but it has to be said that, Chris, while we're talking about averages and 6.5s, maybe the fear of one of these being 1 and 3 coming to the 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. That could definitely be the case. And obviously, it's been a big build to this match. So there's probably a lot of pressure on both of them, and especially, Chris and some of his antics leading up to over the last few weeks. He really had to put the pressure on himself to get this victory, and maybe that's just what it was. Really, give them both a bit of a slow start.
Andrew, I can forgive missing Couples Retreat because they're kind of 3 or 4 movies of the same nature, but surely you can't be missing Hocus Pocus.
I mean, that was a tough one. I gotta say, we talked about all this season how the questions have moved around in difficulty, and at times we've had some questions about those questions, saying things like, "Are there too many context clues?" And I gotta say, in a round where you're given a question about 2 backpackers on a trip in a horror movie in London, very, very key points in these questions. You got to listen carefully when you're in these matchups because there's a lot being given away and maybe a few gimmies in here. Gotta say, I agree. It is always possible to have a blind spot. There is no one who knows anything about movies who hasn't forgotten something important from a movie that they've seen multiple times. When asked, we know it happens to every single person. But Hocus Pocus, real easy question, kind of a toss-up. And what it's really showing me as we watch this round number 1, these 2 guys are obviously, hey, they're brothers. They've probably watched a lot of the same movies. They're getting the same answers. They're missing the same things, maybe even having some of the same nerves. Although I think you can already see that bubbling up in Chris Adams. He knows in round 1 that he needs to put up a performance here. He's the one that people are looking for to make an impact in this match a little bit more than Robert. That's not to say that Robert can't do something here, but Chris has pressure on him. And I think right away, we're going to see him reacting to that pressure and maybe getting just a little bit back inside of his own head. Not the best round for either player, and I agree. Really take your time, pay attention to those questions. There's points being left on the table, and that's never a good thing.
Vernon, Robert seems to be a more calmer player than Chris. Is that a fair comment to make?
Oh, it's absolutely a fair comment. Chris being the younger one, even if it never comes out, he obviously has to prove up to the big brother that he is as good as the big brother. And, the audience is watching. He knows that. And just his ability to take a deep breath and breathe when it comes to missing a question is not there like Robert's is. And granted, it may just be because Robert has one more professional match in front of the lights than Chris has, but absolutely right. Andrew said it best. You have to be able to calm yourself, not get in your head, and continue through, skip the question you missed, and move on.
So listen, let's move into round 2 of this fight. Our wheel comes up. Spinners' opponents in our 10 categories being Black Cinema, J-Lo, Chris Nolan, Alien and Predator, Bruce Willis, 80s, Fast and Furious, Francis McDormand, Guillermo del Toro, and movie release dates. Robert decides to go first, and he wants to put on scoreboard pressure here. Gets J-Lo on his first spin, decides he doesn't want it, and he gets it on his second spin, so he's got to keep it. He goes 6 of 8. He knows that Matthew McConaughey is the co-star in The Wedding Planner. He knows that Ants is the animated film that J-Lo lent her voice with Christopher Walken, and Sylvester Stallone, and knows that Ralph Fiennes is the Academy-nominated actor with J-Lo in Made in Manhattan. It's this fourth question: who directed Jiggly? Robert decides to say Gore Verbinski. Chris, with the opportunity for the steal, says Rob Marshall. Martin Brest being the correct answer. Looking at Robert's stats coming into this, he's 10 of 12 with an average of 6.3. So he's down about 0.3, 0.5 of a point. There's not too much in it. It's probably standard enough for his play. We come on to Chris. On spin, number 1, Guillermo del Toro decides to take it, and he also goes 6 of 8 here. And the same way, he gets the first 3 correct. He knows that Sally Hawkins is in The Shape of Water. He knows that Pacific Rim is the 2013 film about a war between humankind and a monster sea creatures, and he knows that Guillermo has directed 2 movies in the Hellboy franchise. It's this fourth question here in Crimson Peak: what household object does Enid defend herself against Lucille? He goes down to multiple choice on this. He says knitting needle. Robert, with the opportunity to steal, says scissors, the correct answer being butcher knife. Again, looking at Chris's round 2 stats, he came into this 11 of 12 with an average of 7, so he's actually got a better round 2 average than Robert, all things considered, but he's down 1 point on this. It's 12-11 as we move in. And Chris, again, the stats suggest that there's not much in it. A 6-6 round 2 split here, and we just keep moving on, 1 point difference.
Yeah, neck and neck. And it was obviously all the way through that first round and back through this second round as well. And it's just the fact they're both missing on the fourth question as well. They just seem to be going like tit for tat. That's the right phrase I'm looking for there. Yeah. But yeah, so it's interesting match. It's left us with an interesting prospect going into the third round as well, with only the 1 point difference there.
And Andrew, again, it's surprising seeing the difference in the 2 brothers play here at the same stage, the same time in the match, both on the fourth question. One wagering the guess, the other one going down to multiple choice for difference.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting dichotomy to watch these 2 brothers go against each other in the ring, as it were, the metaphorical ring. Robert Adams has always struck me as a man who, while occasionally I may find him to be a little bit by the numbers, he is very much as well, and I'm going to repeat myself, by the numbers. And that can be a good thing. You get your points, you play your game, you don't let it get on and get to you. Chris Adams, a little bit more volatile when it comes to how he's going to react to this. And I got to say to you guys, I may have said that some of these questions out there, you're leaving points on the table. And let me just assure you, as a person who got the answer right while he was watching along and is deeply ashamed of it, you do not have to feel bad for not knowing who directed Geely. Please, guys, this is not a point you need to worry about, no matter how close it is. And Chris Adams, I think maybe he's looking at that point deficit going into round number 3, and he's saying to himself, I'm behind. He's forgetting the reality, the objective numerical reality that you're still basically in the same situation as you would be if you were tied. Yes, if you go even with your opponent, you're going to lose. But in all other cases, you need your opponent to make that same one miss. So go into round 3. Let's do what you always hear Kaiser say to Schmoedown competitors. It's a new round. It's a new game. Play it from 0. Start from the beginning and let all of the rest of it go. If Chris Adams can do that going into round 3, I still think he's got a really good chance here. But Robert is clearly the more calm, the more collected, and I think that we all know what's going to happen as we move forward from here.
And I suppose, Vernon, before we get into round 3, one of the feelings that I had for this match was that Chris almost had to kind of play positive and be in front, and just slipping on that last question, it just handed the reins just ever so slightly back to Robert.
I mean, you said it best. Points pressure is where we went with this, and Robert knew what he was doing. So the outcome of round 2 really did not surprise me that much, because one would think that PLD has a secret camera on our study sessions, because the guys hit the questions that I asked in the study session. It's almost insane that 4 of the questions were in our study session, and the ones that they missed were not. But yeah, Chris has to either be even or above here to feel confident going into round 3, because as we will go into it, Chris is not the strongest of round 3 players, where Robert is.
And listen, let's get into round 3. They both came, their averages respectively. Robert came into a round 3 career average of 7 out of 7. Chris Adams's round 3 career average has been 2 out of 8. So this is where the big discrepancy between the 2 competitors are. And as we get into the questions, Chris's 2 in 2010s, this 2016 Coen Brothers film featuring George Clooney and Frances McDormand, Hail Caesar being the answer. Back to Robert and his 2 in musicals. What movie is directed by John Landis and stars Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi? Flouse brothers. And then here we go, Chris Adams on the 3 in 70s. Warren Beatty co-wrote, co-directed, and starred as a backup quarterback for the LA Rams in this fantastic fantasy comedy. Hits a repeat, no answer given, heaven can wait being the correct answer, all on the 5. Chris doesn't really have a great record hitting 5s. He's one of 3, I believe, going into this match. In the category of Ed Harris, in 2019's The Last Full Measure, who plays Scott Huffman, a Pentagon staffer who interviews Vietnam veterans, including Ed Harris, William Hurt, and Samuel Jackson. To be fair to him, he uses his last 2 repeats and wagers the guess of Robert Redford. The incorrect answer, unfortunately, Sebastian Stan being the correct answer. And your winner, 2-2, Robert Adams, with a final score of 14-13. And Chris, ultimately, it really is the same story for Chris. Round 3, letting him down again.
Yeah, it is, unfortunately, and it's that 5-point question. You know, I mean, you have to commend him that, you know, he used his repeats. He took all the time he could to try and get there, just couldn't quite get there. But it's definitely something he needs to kind of look at, I think, and work on over the next season when he's got his free time.
This is it. And I suppose, Andrew, Chris's 5, if we actually look at it from just a question point of view, forget anything else, the question gives you a lot of the cast members. So I'm wondering, is it easier then to dissect the actor that you're looking for with everything else being taken out of the equation?
I don't disagree that there's some context in this question, but I've got to say, in my opinion, this question is really you've seen it or you haven't. This is a toss-up. This is the kind of film where if you know heaven can wait, the question becomes much easier. Maybe not even so much a 5-point. Maybe this is where we start arguing. This is a 3-pointer. This is a 2-pointer. They gave away so much of it. But if you haven't seen it, if that's a movie that has slipped by you, and, you know, I got to be honest, I'm assuming just based on the age of the average competitor in the FCL, a lot of them haven't seen Heaven Can Wait, then you're not going to get this question. Kudos to Chris Adams for keeping his cool as much as he could. I said I thought he was in his head, but what does he do? He takes his time. He does use his repeats, both of his repeats. He offers a guess, and in the off chance that he had been correct on that guess, what does he do? He puts the pressure back, he stays alive, and he continues to fight against his brother. So I think well handled in the 3rd round. But as you pointed out already, this is not where Chris Adams eats. If Chris Adams is going to make a meal out of you, he's going to do it in round 1 and round 2. He's going to get ahead. He's going to stay ahead, and he's going to make sure you never have a chance to catch up. He's not in a good position. He fights with every ounce that he has left. He uses all of his opportunities, all of his resources, and it's just a little bit short. I know he's got to be feeling frustrated, as I would be, as anybody would be. Hopefully, we won't see too much come out of that frustration, but again, I might be getting ahead of myself.
And listen, Vernon, post-match interviews happen. Chris is pissed off. Robert, you know, the kind of solemn as he always is. And then Chris decides to just take matters in his own hands and channel his inner Andrew Guy, tackles Robert. A lot of damage seemingly done on the poor guy. And Brad, to be fair to him, very quick, hands out the lifetime ban to Chris Adams. The gentleman is no more. His career is done. This is not acceptable behavior in any way, shape, or form. And quite frankly, Brad had to do what he had to do in the moment.
You know, the frustration is real. The younger brother fails to the older brother, and he takes it out on him. And this, you know, is the 3rd time that this behavior has happened between these two, between different shows, and now officially on a trivia show. And the lifetime ban, yeah, I respect that. I respect Brad's decision. But then again, I've seen Ric Flair get fired or retire so many times from wrestling, and he still is in, you know, still in the tights. So, you know, looking back at the 3rd round really quick, we've been doing this for 30 weeks, guys. And one thing we have to hit home is round 3 is where you make or break a game. And we've seen people go from big leads to losing in round 3 because their other player was stronger. So in the offseason, guys, gals, got to do something about round 3.
Definitely. And with that ends our recap of FCL 30. And let's look forward to the big end of season event, FCL Warfare. Let's break it down, gents.
We are here, the end of the 1st season of the FCL, and it's going to be FCL Warfare. We've got 4 massive matches coming up next week, one of which is on the screen now. It's a match that people have a lot of people have probably always wanted, finally seeing both halves of Late to the Party face off head to head. Although it is obviously slightly bittersweet, with this one being, of course, a retirement match from two players who have been a mainstay in the Schmoedown for many years. Vernon, both players have been obviously fan favourites over the years, and while we all are all very happy for all the success they're finding outside of the Schmoedown world, it's obviously a great shame to see them go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we are sad to see them go, but I know there's a group of people that is very happy to see these two go from the FCL, and it's the other competitors, because you literally have two of the strongest players in the FCL, Robert being undefeated, Vanessa being in the first #1 contenders match. So while it is bittersweet, I'm looking forward to this match being an absolute show stealer.
Absolutely. Okay, Keith and then Andrew, to be honest, what have you got any general thoughts on this match and the retirement of late to the Party? And obviously, Keith, you've added some nice little stats onto these images as well. So anything you guys want to say? We'll go Keith first.
I suppose, listen, the prevailing thing in my head is that I think this is going to be the first time that Robert Montano is going to have to hit a 5-pointer. He hasn't had to do it in his 3 matches to date. And looking at the stats on screen, this says to you that Vanessa is going to get him to a 5-pointer. And this is the crux of it. Like, they're going to blitz through round 1. They're going to, swerve through round 2. They're going to go 2 and 3. And then there's going to be some sort of a gap here, one way or another, for a 5-point win either way. Maybe we see the first ever perfect match. And what a way that would be to go out. Maybe it's double perfect, and then we're into overtime. And I just think that this is if this is the match that kicks off Warfare, it's a great match to have. And ultimately, I'm sure I speak for all of us and wish them all the best in their careers moving forward past this, because they've been such a breath of fresh air, and it's been great to actually have them down the FCL. I have said that Robert is the acid test for anyone, but now it's kind of acid is going to play acid in a not so much a civil war, but perhaps a domestic dispute, shall we say.
Okay, Andrew, anything to add?
I mean, I have a lot to say about this matchup. First and foremost, truly a shame to be losing 2 luminaries of the FCL. I don't think that word is hyperbole. I think both of these individuals, Vanessa and Robert, have played incredibly. They've lent a lot of legitimacy. They've lent a lot of the Schmoedown rub to the FCL, and neither one of them can be said to be anything less than the greatest competitor. And I would have loved to be a fly on the wall at the FCL offices in the last few weeks, walking around while Chris and Robert Adams said Civil War, and then Robert and Vanessa said, no, we called it first. And then that little girl from the taco commercial showed up and said, why not both? And everybody was happy, and we all cheered. Civil War is starting off. And I also know, from having done a few of these shows, been around them, I know this industry a little bit, and I know you always start off with a real killer to get your show going. And if ever there was a killer in this league, this is it. Imagine that Fishburn and Flouse were not playing for the title. This would be a main event. It's that caliber of matchup, and I agree with everybody on the panel when I say I think we're going to see some impressive play, some very large point totals, and no matter who wins, this is an amazing way to kick off Warfare. What an opening matchup. If this is how it starts, I can't wait to see how it all turns out.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo everything you guys have said there. So let's move on to the next match we're at least going to talk about now. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be the next one on the card. The official card hasn't been announced, the order of things, but we're going to go with this one, which is a #1 contenders match between Maxwell Haddad and Alex Marzoña. Now, obviously, there's no denying both Alex and Maxwell have earned the right to be here in this match. Alex with a perfect 3-0 record. Maxwell with a 3-1. His only defeat coming against Robert Montano, who, should he not be retiring, I'm pretty sure would probably be in and around this match himself. Keith, obviously we have these stats in front of us here. What are your general thoughts on the matchup? I mean, it's not an easy one to call, is it really?
No, it's not. It's much the same as the last match. These two are very, like, they've shown a lot of knowledge. They've shown a lot of intent. They've shown a lot of skill. The big thing that that hits me is the round 2 here. They've both gone 3 out of 4 in all of their round 2s. Neither of them have gone perfect in round 2, and I think that that's potentially where this match is won and lost. I think if one of these can hold throw, as I've been saying all season, that's going to be the deciding factor, because again, they're solid at the top and they're solid at the base. So it's going to be that middle factor, that wheel spin, that opponents, that spinners, that strength, not strength, secondary strength, that I think is going to decide this match. I'm not going to say who I think is going to win, because whoever does win is going to be a rightful number one contender. But I think the round 2 is going to dictate who gets this done.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting prospect, this match. Okay, so Vernon, obviously both these guys, they're pretty tough runs. They've done very well to get to this point. I think Maxwell's 3 victories came against Just Daggers, Robert Adams and Brennan Marr. Alex's being Aaron Turner, Chris Adams, and Kofi Outlaw. So this was definitely a well-earned opportunity for both of them.
Yeah, and you said it best. The road getting to this match was not the easiest. And some of these stats up here, speak to maybe a one-off point per player, but it's much closer than that. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to is the chat support going into this match. Both of these players are loved by everybody in the chat. And again, you talk about Warfare needing main events, because the main event might not just be that. You've now got your second match, and it is going to be equally as entertaining as the first, because the promos are going to be hot on this match as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Andrew, any final thoughts? Which way do you see this one going?
I mean, we're once again kicking into it. We're starting off with a who's who of the upper echelons of the FCL. 2 competitors who I don't think it's a stretch to say, if their seasons go just a little bit differently, a point or a question bounces the one way instead of the other, either of these guys could be in the Travis Fishburn spot. They could be opening up against somebody in a big, big way. I don't think there's anything lacking in this matchup. And I agree with the assessment that we've heard about the points already. That round 2 is going to be crucial. If you get an opportunity to go after your opponent, you need to search for it. You need to fight for it. You need to find it, and then you need to go for blood. And let me clarify quickly, because I didn't get to say this during our Adams breakdown. When I say go for blood, obviously, I'm a fan of somebody who has a lot of drive, who wants to get their opponent, and you can attack them verbally. You can attack them mentally, but you can never, and I repeat, never attack someone physically. This should always be off limits. We do not approve of that sort of behavior. So Maxwell Haddad, this one goes out to you. When I say go for the jugular, I do mean metaphorically. After the match, you and Marzoña can have a drink. Don't push him over. It's been done. Let that go. No matter what the outcome, I think the truth is, if I'm being serious, both these guys are going to put on a match for us. You said it yourself. The promos are going to be fire. The match is going to come down to a few points, most likely, and it's going to be a slugfest the entire way. What a show. Only 2 matches in, and we know what the main event is. I cannot say enough about how great I think the booking has been coming to the end of this season in the FCL to really fill out what is a pay-per-view style, a super event style event. And it's going to be a good one if this is anything to judge by.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so let's move on to the next match we're going to talk about, which is the Star Wars Championship match. Obviously, JC took the title in the first championship match against Sonny Olsen. So Brennan's got a perfect record in the Star Wars division, so he's obviously well earned this chance to take on JC. Andrew, obviously, it's a well earned shot for Brennan after what has been a pretty solid season for him across multiple divisions.
It has been a very solid season. Brennan Marr may be one of the most impressive multi-division competitors in the FCL. There's only a few people who can really lay claim to that title, but he is absolutely one of them. Now, Star Wars is not always my largest area of expertise. I don't know it as well as some of these competitors do. So I'm going to be interested to see this matchup, but it's not the thing that was foremost on my mind. What I can say for sure is I know that these guys are going to know how to pronounce things that I couldn't even begin to pronounce. Oh, and to a point that Keith made earlier, I agree with you. Idris Elba would be a great James Bond.
Okay, Keith, we haven't seen JC, obviously, since he won the belt back on FCL 17, I believe it was. Do you think there is the potential to see some rust in his game going up against a player who's obviously had a lot of matches in recent months?
It's funny you say that, Chris, because I think it's the opposite effect in the sense that this, while we have round 1, 2, and 3 play here, this is a 5-rounder. There's a betting round. There's a speed round to take into effect. Brennan hasn't done one of these. I'm sure he's practicing them at the moment in his training sessions, but JC's been through a 5-round match, and there's a lot to be said for that. Like, we've spoken to the like a Nick Harley, on screen and off screen, and just having that, in your back pocket, knowing the ups and downs of a 5-rounder, and Vernon, I said this when I was on with you the other week. I think that there's a sense of Brennan mania around the league, and I really think that JC's actually going to come into this. He's probably going to come into this maybe as the underdog, because I think the chat's going to be rooting for Brennan. A lot of people are going to be talking about Brennan, but I really think that JC is underrated. I think he's solid. He's shown improvement from match 1 to match 2, and I have JC winning this. I don't think that Brennan, as stupid as this sounds, I don't think Brennan wins this match. I think JC loses it. And so for that, I'm going for the Gungalorian.
Okay. And Vernon, is anything else you would like just to add about this match in generally? And obviously, more importantly, maybe, which way do you think it's going? Or you can join me on my fence. No problem. There's plenty of room.
So, yeah, I mean, the point is 5-rounder versus 3-rounder. And JC's got the experience there. And Brennan, while yes, may have more in-ring experience playing more matches, here's the thing. Brennan had no business being a multi-round competitor if he was going to be this strong in Star Wars. It should have been Star Wars, no other distractions. Let's go for the title. Let's get it done, then take over the rest of the league. Now, suffice to say, Brennan is strong in all categories that he does. So don't get me wrong. I love watching him do everything he does. I want to see him as a multi-belt champion. But here you are. This is your focus. You don't have time for anything else because JC works, lives, breathes Star Wars. Brennan, same thing, has a podcast about Star Wars. These two have to be at the top of their game. And honestly, I'm going to join you on the fence. I know Brennan Mania is strong, but JC is just as strong as a single competitor. So I have got to be on the fence with you on this one. I don't know how this is going to go.
It's no problem at all. Like I said, plenty of room up here. Okay, so let's move on to what obviously should be the main event. It is Travis Fishburn taking on the ZaFlertinFlouse for the championships. Obviously, the small print on the contract has absolutely backfired on the Flouse. Obviously, not being facing off against Brad Gilmore, as we said. There isn't much I can really say about Fishburn apart from, well, look at the stats on the screen in front of you. It's like mouth-watering. In his 4 matches, 4 wins, coming against Fred Klein in his debut back on FCL 11, then following that up with wins against Chris Adams, James Shimo, and the Flouse's right-hand man, Andrew Furtado. Andrew, we mentioned last week and expected all may not be as it seems when Brad put himself in the match. What are your general thoughts of this match and which way it's going to go now we know it's actually Travis facing the Flouse?
Well, first and foremost, my thoughts are this should be a whole lot of fun. Obviously, Travis Fishburn has been killing his promos all season long. We love the travesty. ZaFlertinFlouse is a superstar. We knew it before he showed up in the FCL. We know it now that he's got even more gold around his waist, and this should be a heck of a matchup. Also, earlier we had a bunch of great matchups in Warfare. You didn't ask for my opinion. You didn't ask who I thought would win, and I was very thankful for that because this may be match for match the tightest card we have ever seen in the FCL. It's very hard to call from one match to the next. That being said, Travis the Travesty Fishburn will absolutely be your next FCL champion. I have no doubt in my mind. ZaFlertinFlouse will do his best. He will put up a fight and he will be the people's champion that we have all deserved. We will thank him for his service, for lording over us as only he could do for this long in the FCL. But I don't think he has any chance of making it out alive. If there is a massacre on this card, if there is one man who is walking in to doom without knowing it, if there's a Halloween Kills and Michael Myers is around the corner, then I'm sorry, but ZaFlertinFlouse, he is waiting for you.
Absolutely. Fishburn has had a fantastic debut season and the right to be here. Some will say Flouse didn't even earn the title belt that he's got around his waist anyway. So I'm going to go Vernon and then Keith. Just any final thoughts you want to say about this? Obviously, the stats that are on the screen are breathtaking from Fishburn.
Yeah, and even though the stats are somewhat equal number-wise, whenever you really look at it, from a percentage point, Fishburn has been responsible for some of the best storyline plots going into the season. I mean, the gentleman's got a mustache because of this guy. In a perfect world, you see Travis Fishburn knocking out ZaFlertinFlouse in round 4, never even getting to a round 5 in this one. But here's the thing. Crazier things have happened. And I said it this week on my show, and I threw up afterwards because I can't believe that I said it. I think I want ZaFlertinFlouse to win this match because of the fact I know, kayfabe aside, Brett could bring a match to Fishburn that maybe we did not think he had in him. So I just want to see what the story would do if Flouse wins. So yeah, as much as Travis is going to win, I'd kind of like to see Flouse to go for it.
Okay, Keith, anything to add?
I mean, there's so many ways and layers that we can talk about this. Yes, we could say Travis Fishburn is going to knock out Flouse. Yes, we could say that Flouse isn't going to turn up and this, that, and the other. But I think there's kind of similarities to this than what we spoke about with the Star Wars match, with the betting round, with the speed round. And ultimately, all Flouse has to do is just stick at it and stay within range. And then maybe Fishburn gets shaky hands. You just don't know, because everyone, bar Vernon, is expecting Fishburn to win this. So that brings its own pressure almost in another way. But like, Flouse had played the one match against Warfare. He got the job done, and his stats are pretty solid there. If he does that, and then maybe bets, conservatively in round 2, and then, to a point that Andrew made when we kind of broke down the Star Wars match, not give away any points, but still kind of keep within range, then you're looking at him maybe being down by maybe 5-6 going into round 3. And then if he hits a few questions, puts it back on Fishburn, you just never know. Because again, everyone is expecting Fishburn to win this. And that is, who thought Andrew Guy was going to beat Dan Murrah? Who thought Dim Malanta was going to beat Alex Damon? Nobody, really. But who thinks that Fishburn isn't going to come out with the championship? Well, only one man on screen. Ultimately, I think that this is going to end in and around kind of the 2-pointer in round 5. Kind of a TKO job is what we all expect. That's what I think as well. But one thing's for certain, this is going to be an exciting title fight to round off the season, and the character work is just going to be exceptional.
Absolutely. And I think that probably wraps up the look at next week. It's going to be a very exciting end of the season, as Keith said. So, Andrew, do you want to just take us out?
Absolutely, I will. Let me go ahead first and say to all of you who have watched to this point, thank you, as always, for joining us here on This Week in the FCL. We say it every week, and every week we mean it a little bit more. You are the reason the show goes out, and we appreciate all of your viewership. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to find out more about what we're doing here on This Week in the FCL, you can, of course, check out our Twitter at ThisWeekFCL. And if you want to check each of us out individually, we are available in some various places online. Let's start with the newly minted trailer reviewer, Chris Barnes. Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at @ChrisBarnes_UK, and obviously I'm not flying the nest completely, but venturing out on my own with a new show on this channel, CB Off the Fence, because I'm fed up of getting told I'm always on the fence. So check out. I've just put the one little preview video out and a trailer reaction for the Uncharted trailer, which I was very excited about. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
All right, Keith is here as well. He is always breaking down all of the stats. I gotta say it because nobody else will. If there is a numbers man, somebody who knows all the ins and outs of the technical stats in the FCL, it's this man right here. And we have the privilege for the last 30 weeks of having him do the breakdowns for us. Thank you for your expertise and, of course, for joining us today. Keith, where can people find you online?
Twitter and Instagram at KeekleDuff89, and also check me out on the Opening Pair Network on YouTube and podcast form. We've a few little things coming up next week. Probably got a breakdown of Ireland's unfortunate, disappointing World Cup cricket campaign, and big UFC card coming up, UFC 267. So please do join myself, Kyle Gavin, subscribe, share, do all the bits. Thank you as always for being here.
I am, of course, the Elk. You can find me on Twitter where I occasionally tweet things at random at Kelk Andrew. And I would love it as well, just like Keith said, if you do all those like and subscribe things to our show. Another show that you might want to do that for, of course, is the show of our wonderful guest, Vernon. Why don't you tell everybody about that program as well as everything else you're doing? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. So Twitter, _fansview, where you get all the Fans View Network stuff. Obviously, a Fans View of the FCL guys, just like you, 30 weeks into it, really 31, because we all did an introductory video. It's amazing we've gotten this far. Every Saturday in October, you can find us doing a Fans View of Chucky, the new Sci-Fi USA series. We're doing reviews of that. And every Wednesday night, you can find us doing a Fans View of Film Favorites, while in October, we are finalizing up our Nightmare on Elm Street watch-along double features with next week, we're doing a new Nightmare and Freddy versus Jason. So that's where you can find us.
Sounds like a lot of Halloween fun, ranging from the frightening to the schlocky. Go ahead and check out everything that they're doing over on a Fans View, and check out Vernon as well. Give him some love for coming on the show, as we will. Vernon, thank you so much. You are, as I said at the beginning of the show, an expert in this field, and we were thrilled to have your expertise joining us on the show today. Of course, folks, that's going to do it for this particular episode. You can always come back and check us out, watch those old episodes, listen to us on podcast. But we're going to kick off for this week, and we will be returning next week when we discuss everything going down. That's right. It's here. It's finally the end of the season. We've got some of the closest matches we've ever seen. We start off with Civil War and explode into full-blown warfare, and we've got 2 different titles on the line. Truly an event that is worthy of the name pay-per-view, special event, or the end of the season. It all comes to a head. The warheads are ready. They are aimed at the competitors, and everybody can't wait to see who's going to come out on top as we kick off Warfare next week and discuss everything else that happened this week in the FCL.